When a team needs to add artificial intelligence to their workflow, the hardest part isn't finding an Amazon Web Services service that works. It's finding the one that fits their specific constraint: cost, latency, data freshness, compliance. Two services can both solve the problem, but only one solve it given the constraint. That reasoning skill is exactly what the Amazon Web Services Certified AI Practitioner exam tests. Stack lessons here. Let's get you exam ready. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what the Amazon Web Services Certified AI Practitioner exam tests, how its 5 domains are weighted, and where your highest leverage study time goes. This is the map for the whole course, so let's get oriented before we start studying in earnest. Before we go further, let's pin down 5 terms you'll hear on repeat throughout this course. Amazon Bedrock is Amazon Web Services' managed service for building on top of foundation models, so you use the models without hosting them. RAG, short for Retrieval Augmented Generation, retrieves fresh documents at query time, so the model can reference facts it was never trained on. Fine-tuning is different. It trains the model on your own examples, so it internalizes a lasting style. A foundation model is the large, pre-trained model everything else builds on. And compensatory scoring means your result is calculated across all domains together, with no minimum required in any single one. To make all of this concrete, we'll follow one company through the entire course. Meet Beacon Labs, a 280-person clinical trial analytics firm putting Amazon Bedrock into production. The catch is that everything they do runs under HIPAA and GDPR, so compliance is never an afterthought. We'll return to Beacon Labs constantly, because it turns abstract ideas into real engineering decisions someone actually has to make. And because their data is so sensitive, their workflows naturally pull in the responsible AI and governance topics that trip up so many candidates. The official exam guide is refreshingly direct about what it measures. It says the certification validates your ability to identify the appropriate use of artificial intelligence and generative AI technologies to solve business problems. Read that phrase again, identify the appropriate use. It doesn't say recall specifications, and it doesn't say implement systems. It says choose the right approach for a business situation. That single sentence shapes every question you'll face, and it shapes how this whole course is built. Because you can't identify which 15 scenarios don't count, your only rational strategy is to answer all 65 as if each one matters. That's the single practical consequence of how this exam is structured. The mechanics behind it, you get 90 minutes for 65 scenarios, 50 of which are scored, and 15 of which are unscored pretest items. Amazon Web Services is evaluating for future exams. Those 15 are not marked. Your raw score converts to a scaled score from 100 to 1,000, and 700 is the passing threshold. The model is compensatory. Everything is aggregated with no minimum required in any single domain. And there's no penalty for guessing, so an unanswered question is simply scored as wrong. The goal isn't to figure out which questions don't count. The goal is to build your reasoning well enough that the distinction doesn't matter. When you've genuinely worked through the constraint in every scenario, you don't need to second guess which items are pretest. Preparing as if every question counts is also just good preparation. The habit of careful reasoning over every scenario is exactly what earns the pass. You'll see 5 scenario formats, and they aren't all equally forgiving. Multiple choice is the friendly one. 4 options, 1 right answer, pick the best fit. That's the bulk of the exam. Then there are 4 more complex formats. Multiple response asks you to select every correct option from 5 or more, and there's no partial credit, so getting 3 of 4 right scores the same as 0. Ordering asks you to arrange steps in sequence, like the stages of a machine learning pipeline, and you need every step in the right position. Matching asks you to pair services to scenarios, where every pair has to be correct. Case study questions are a bit different from those last two. They give you a shared scenario and then ask several sub-questions from that single prompt, but each sub-question is scored independently. So with case studies, partial knowledge still earns partial credit, unlike matching and ordering, where you need the full sequence or full set of pairs exactly right. Domain 3, Applications of Foundation Models, covers the scenario matching skill that separates candidates, choosing the right service for a given constraint. That conceptual load is reflected in its weight, 28%, the heaviest single domain. Domain 2, Fundamentals of Generative AI, follows at 24%, building the vocabulary that Domain 3 depends on. Domain 1, the Fundamentals of Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning, carries 20%. And then the two governance domains, Responsible AI at 14%, and Security, Compliance, and Governance also at 14%. The weight of each domain signals where the exam's conceptual center of gravity sits, and domains 2 and 3 together make up more than half of it. Responsible, AI, and governance aren't afterthoughts in real deployments. They're load-bearing decisions that determine whether a model gets approved to run in production. The exam reflects that. Domains 4 and 5 together carry 28%, the same weight as domain 3, the single heaviest domain. Candidates tend to understudy them because 14% each looks small in isolation. But left thin, two domains at that combined weight are enough to pull an otherwise strong result below the passing threshold. In the real world, two services often look like they could solve the same problem. What separates the right choice is a single constraint buried in the requirements: cost, operational overhead, retraining, data freshness. The exam mirrors this exactly. Every question opens with a business situation and a constraint, then asks which approach fits. At least two options are usually technically correct in a vacuum. The one that fits is determined by a single constraint word in the question stem. Catch that word, and the choice becomes clear. Miss it, and two answers stay equally plausible. In real deployments, every architecture decision hinges on one constraint: cost, latency, freshness, or retraining overhead. Once you name the constraint, the service choice often follows directly. The requirement says least operational overhead. That points toward a managed service. It says without retraining. That points toward RAG because you're refreshing what the model references, not retraining it. It says no code or enterprise knowledge. That's the profile for Amazon Q Business. It says detect bias. The exam guide currently maps that to SageMaker Clarify, though Clarify entered maintenance mode in mid-2026, so keep an eye on whether that mapping updates. The exam tests this same reasoning habit by embedding these constraints in every scenario. Name the constraint first, and the answer lane becomes clear before you've even read the options. In April 2026, Amazon Web Services added agentic AI and the Model Context Protocol to Bedrock, representing a significant shift in how teams build multi-step workflows. Instead of a model answering a single prompt, agents now orchestrate sequences of actions across external tools, and the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, is the open standard that connects them. This is now core to the exam because it's core to the platform. Version 1.1, published April 30th, also added token-based pricing, prompt caching, cost optimization tooling, prompt versioning, and new in-scope services including Bedrock AgentCore, Amazon Q, and SageMaker Jumpstart, spread across all 5 domains. As a consequence, any study material published before that date is missing all of it. Here's the mental model that anchors the heaviest domain. There are 4 levers you can pull with a foundation model, and every scenario maps to one of them. RAG changes what the model can reference, so it's your lever for fresh, frequently changing facts. Prompt engineering changes how the model responds to a given input. On the other side, Fine-tuning changes how the model behaves over time by internalizing a persistent style. And distillation changes the cost and performance profile by compressing a larger model into a smaller, cheaper one. Freshness, response shaping, lasting behavior, or cost. Pick the lever that matches the constraint. We'll go deep on each of these starting in the next video. Let's make that real with Beacon Labs. Their clinical trial protocol documents get updated every week as regulatory guidance shifts, and the team needs a Q&A assistant that always reflects the latest version. That's RAG. You index the documents and retrieve them at query time, so updates show up instantly with no retraining. Now compare that to their regulatory reports, which have to match a cautious house writing style medical writers refined over 5 years. That's fine-tuning because you're teaching the model a lasting behavior, not looking something up. RAG is a lawyer with an up-to-date filing cabinet. Fine-tuning is sending that lawyer through a specialization program. So here's how the course is structured in 3 phases. Phase 1 builds your vocabulary, the domain 1 and 2 foundations, where we pin down the difference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI plus tokens and embeddings. From there, phase 2 moves into domain 3, where we master Bedrock's components and the service to scenario map that decides so many questions. And finally, phase 3 layers on responsible AI and governance, the domain 4 and 5 material, connecting Amazon Web Services' 8 dimensions of responsible AI, things like fairness, explainability, and controllability, to the actual controls that enforce them. Vocabulary first, then selection, then governance. Beacon Labs rides along through every phase. You might wonder why we picked a clinical trial company specifically. It's deliberate. Clinical trial analytics forces HIPAA and GDPR into every single decision, so compliance isn't a topic we bolt on, it's baked into the story from the start. Data sensitivity and audit trail obligations come along for free. So do multi-stakeholder approval workflows, which make abstract governance ideas feel concrete. The result is that every responsible AI and governance concept has an organic home in one company's real engineering decisions. That's exactly the material candidates tend to understudy, so we're building it in from day one. Let's talk about how to actually spend your study hours. A cadence that works well is 50, 30, 20. Put 50% of your time into practice questions, but with a twist, review every wrong answer deliberately, asking which constraint word you missed and which service it pointed to. Spend 30% in the documentation, mainly the official exam guide and the service pages, and reserve the last 20% for hands-on exploration in the Bedrock console, so the services stop being abstract. One more tip that candidates swear by: write your notes by hand. Reformulating a service distinction in your own words holds up far better under exam pressure than highlighting ever will. Let's be clear about scope, because it sets your expectations correctly. What's tested is matching AI capabilities to business constraints, knowing your vocabulary and service boundaries precisely, and reasoning about when to use which approach. What's not tested is writing code, SDK syntax, mathematical modeling, or the deep mechanics of tuning a model. This is a foundational, conceptual exam. But here's the part people get wrong. Foundational does not mean easy. There's no coding required, yet the difficulty comes from scenario nuance and cleverly designed distractors. Depth of reasoning is the target, not depth of implementation. Let's lock in the anchors that carry through the whole course. First, answer all 65 scenarios because you can't tell which ones don't count. Second, read the stem for constraint words before you evaluate any option. That habit alone eliminates the nearest distractor. Third, give domains 4 and 5 real study time, since together they weigh as much as the heaviest single domain. Fourth, make sure your materials cover version 1.1 because agentic AI, MCP, and AgentCore are now in scope. And finally, let Beacon Labs turn every abstract concept into a real decision. Now let's see how well you absorbed all of this with a quick 5-question quiz. All right, time to put your knowledge to the test. Question 1. During the exam, a candidate wants to save time by skipping questions they suspect are among the 15 unscored pretest items. What's the correct approach? Option A, answer all 65 questions with full effort, since unscored items are not identified. Option B, skip any question that looks unusually experimental. Option C, answer only the first 50 questions, since those are the scored ones. Or option D, flag the last 15 questions as unscored and answer them with less care. Lock in your answer before I give it away. The right call here is A. The unscored questions are not marked and look identical to the scored ones, so there's no way to safely identify or skip them. Treat every question as if it counts. Question 2. Beacon Labs needs a Q&A assistant over clinical trial protocol documents that are updated weekly, and it must always reflect the latest versions without retraining model. Which approach fits? Option A, fine-tune the foundation model on the documents each week. Option B, use prompt engineering to describe the latest protocols in the system. Prompt. Option C, distill the model into a smaller version to speed up lookups. Or option D, use retrieval augmented generation so the latest documents are retrieved at query time. Run the decision rule before you answer. The answer is D. The signal words are updated weekly and without retraining, which points straight to RAG. It retrieves current documents at query time, so any source update is immediately available with no training cycle at all. Question 3. A candidate plans to focus almost entirely on Domain 3 and largely skip Domains 4 and 5. Why is this risky under the exam scoring model? Option A, Domains 4 and 5 each require a minimum passing score of their own. Option B, Domains 4 and 5 together carry 28%, the same weight as Domain 3 alone. Option C, the exam awards bonus points for balanced domain performance. Or option D, Domain 3 questions can't be answered without Domain 5 knowledge. Think about which constraint matters most here. It has to be B, and here's why. Scoring is compensatory with no per domain minimum, so A is wrong, but Domains 4 and 5 together add up to 28%, exactly the weight of Domain 3. Skipping them leaves more than a quarter of the exam underprepared. Question 4. A study guide published in early 2025 is being used to prepare for the current exam. Which topics is it most likely missing? Option A, basic definitions of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. Option B, the 5 domain names and their general subject areas. Option C, agentic AI, the model context protocol, and Bedrock AgentCore. Or option D, the 65 question structure and the 700 passing threshold. Pause here if you want more time. If you said C, well done. The version 1.1 update in April 2026 added 7 new objectives, including agentic AI, the model context protocol, and Bedrock AgentCore. Any material from before that date simply doesn't cover them. Question 5, the last one. A question presents a business scenario, and 2 of the 4 options both look technically valid. What's the most reliable technique to identify the correct answer? Option A, pick the option that mentions the newest Amazon Web Services service. Option B, identify the constraint word in the question stem and match it to the right service or approach. Option C, choose the longest, most detailed answer. Or option D, select the option that appears most often in your practice tests. Got your pick? Let's see. The answer is B. The exam separates the correct choice from its lookalike using a constraint word in the stem. Something about costs, overhead, retraining, or user role. Reading for that signal before you evaluate the options is the most transferable skill on this whole exam. Next up, we build the single most tested foundation of the whole exam, the nesting hierarchy of AI, machine learning, deep learning, and generative AI. Let's get your vocabulary exam ready.